What's the biggest crime a new homeowner can commit? For my neighbor, it wasn't noise. It wasn't trash. It was simply not introducing myself. You need to move. Welcome to Law and Order, where entitlement meets its match. A year ago, I finally bought my dream house. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small, cozy home in a quiet neighborhood where people waved at each other when they drove by. I was so proud of that house. I'd saved for years to afford it, and honestly, I liked keeping to myself. I didn't throw parties. I didn't make noise. Most of my time was spent doing yard work, fixing things around the house, or relaxing on my deck with a cup of coffee. A few of my neighbors had come over to say hello when I moved in. Everyone seemed nice, so I didn't think much about the fact that I hadn't met everyone yet. Little did I know, one of those people would soon decide that not saying hello was the ultimate insult. It was a Saturday afternoon, about a year after I moved in. I was cleaning my living room when someone started pounding on my front door. It wasn't a normal knock. It was loud, angry, like someone trying to break in. I peeked through the window and saw a woman I didn't recognize. Mid-50s, tight ponytail, wearing a floral robe and slippers. She looked furious. I didn't know her, so I figured maybe it was a salesperson or someone lost. I decided not to answer. That's when I heard her yell through the door, "Why won't you talk to me? I know you're in there." Her voice was sharp and demanding. It startled me. I'd never seen her before. So instead of opening the door, I turned on my doorbell camera and spoke through the speaker. "Hello. I can't come to the door right now."
"How can I help you?"
The woman leaned closer to the camera. Her expression twisted in disgust. "I've never met you. I never see your lights on. I'm concerned this house is empty. Who even lives here?" Her tone wasn't curious, and it was accusing. I blinked, confused. "I live here," I said. "Every day." "I'm sorry, which house are you from?" That one question flipped a switch in her. "It's your fault you don't know me. That's what's wrong with people like you. If you don't know who I am, then you shouldn't be here. You need to move." She stormed off, leaving me standing there staring at the monitor and stunned. I'd just been told to move, for not introducing myself. For a few minutes, I just stood in silence, my heart racing. What had I done wrong? I'd never spoken to this woman before. And yet somehow I'd already become her enemy. The next morning, I decided to do something I normally wouldn't. I didn't want tension on my street. So I went over to her house to apologize, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. Her husband, Bob, answered the door first. He recognized me. We'd spoken before while I was outside mowing. He looked embarrassed, like he already knew why I was there. Then Susan appeared behind him. Her arms were crossed, her lips pressed tight, but she smiled. That fake kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. I just wanted to say hello. "I'm sorry if there was any misunderstanding yesterday." "Oh, that's all I really wanted, to finally meet you." Her voice was sweet, but something about it felt wrong. She wasn't interested in peace. She was satisfied that she'd forced me to come to her. She gave me one last fake smile before closing the door. As I walked back home, I felt uneasy. Something about the encounter stuck with me. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I walked home knowing something didn't feel right. I thought the war was over. In reality, it had just begun. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching my house. Every time I glanced out the window, I thought I saw her curtains move. I told myself I was overthinking it, that maybe she just had a bad day. But a few days later, when the police showed up at my door, accusing me of something I didn't do, I realized Susan wasn't done with me. Not even close. And that's where it all started. The endless accusations, the late-night knocks, and the moment I learned that some neighbors don't want peace. They want control. After that strange peace meeting, I honestly thought things would finally calm down. But the peace didn't last long. In fact, it didn't even last a week. The first time the police showed up, I was standing in my kitchen making coffee. There was a knock at the door. When I opened it, 2 officers were standing there. "Sir," one of them said, "we got a report that you egged your neighbor's house." I blinked, confused. "Egged? What?" "No, I've been home all morning." They looked around, checked the front of my house, even peeked into my trash cans. No eggs, no mess, nothing. After a few minutes, one of them sighed. "Sorry for the bother. Looks like it's just a misunderstanding." They left, and across the street behind her curtain, I could see Susan's shadow. Watching, that was the first time I realized this wasn't going to stop. A few days later, it happened again. Another knock at the door. Another pair of officers. This time they said she reported that I stole a small light fixture from her yard. I almost laughed. "Officers, you're welcome to check my house. You won't find a thing." They looked tired. I could tell this wasn't their first visit here. After a short look around, one of them rubbed his forehead and muttered, "She's wasting everyone's time again." They left, and once again I saw the curtains across the street move. A quick flicker of movement. She was watching me, waiting for me to lose my temper, but I didn't. Inside, though, I was starting to feel trapped. I couldn't even enjoy sitting on my porch without feeling her eyes on me. I'd wake up and check my front yard just in case she had called the cops again. Each time the police left, I could almost feel her frustration. She wanted a reaction. She wanted me to yell, to argue, to give her proof that I didn't belong there. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Then came the night that changed everything. It was 2 a.m. I was fast asleep when a loud, angry pounding echoed through my front door. Bang! 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 At first I thought I was dreaming, but then I heard voices. "Police, open up!" My heart started racing. I stumbled out of bed, confused, half awake. Through the window I saw flashing red and blue lights painting the whole street. It looked like a crime scene. I opened the door wearing my pajamas, still half asleep. 2 police officers were standing there looking furious. "Sir," one barked, "we've received a noise complaint about a loud party. You need to shut it down now." I stared at him wide-eyed. "Party, officer, I'm alone." I was sleeping. "You can come in and see." They looked skeptical, but I invited them inside. Every light in my house was off. No people, no music, no sign of anything. One officer turned to the other, whispering, "This is ridiculous." Their anger shifted, not at me, but at the person who called. They followed me to the front window and looked across the street. Susan's house. The curtains moved again. The older officer sighed. "Stay here," he said, and they both walked straight across the street. From my living room, I watched the whole thing unfold. Susan appeared in her doorway wearing a bathrobe, hair messy, yelling something I couldn't hear. She was pointing at my house, waving her hands like she was proving a case. But the officer didn't say a word. He just crossed his arms and handed her a piece of paper, a ticket. She froze mid-rant. The other officer pointed back toward my house, and then they both walked away. For the first time in months, I smiled. Karma had finally knocked, and this time it wasn't on my door. The next morning, the neighborhood was quiet, peaceful even. I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sunlight creep across the lawns. Across the street, I saw Susan's front door open. She stepped out, arms crossed, face sour. Her husband, Bob, stood behind her, looking tired and embarrassed. I didn't wave. I just took a slow sip of my coffee and looked away. Then, a small movement caught my eye. Susan's dog, a fluffy little thing, was running down the street. No collar, tail wagging, happy to be free. At first, I didn't think much of it. But then I saw a car coming. My heart jumped. I whistled, crouched down, and called to the dog softly. "Hey, buddy, come here." The dog ran straight to me, tail wagging. I grabbed him gently and stood up. For a moment, I looked across the street. Susan hadn't noticed. I could have just let it go, let her deal with the chaos she caused. but that's not who I am. I took a deep breath and walked across the street. When I knocked on her door, it opened after a few seconds. Susan and Bob stood there. Both looked like they hadn't slept. I smiled slightly and said, "Good morning. Looks like you're having a rough start to your day. I believe this belongs to you." I handed over the dog. They stared at me. For once, completely speechless. Bob took the dog without saying a single word. No thank you, no apology. Nothing. He just shut the door. I stood there for a second, then turned around and walked back to my porch. The air felt lighter, quieter. A few minutes later, one of the other neighbors, an older man from down the street, came over. He'd seen the whole thing. He shook his head. "You've been more patient than anyone I've ever met," he said. "She's been telling people all kinds of lies about you. But after that police thing, everyone knows the truth now." I smiled and nodded. "I'm not surprised. I'm just glad it's over." He patted my shoulder and walked away. Days turned into weeks, and for the first time in a long time my street was quiet. No more knocks at the door. No more false reports. No more drama. I could finally sit outside again without feeling watched. The air smelled clean, and the silence. It felt like home. They never thanked me for saving their dog. They never will. But that's okay, because I didn't do it for them. I did it to remind myself that being decent costs nothing. And deep down I know one thing for sure. She finally knows who really belongs here. Welcome to Law and Order, where being a good neighbor is a choice, but getting fined for being a bad one is the law. Subscribe for more real-life karma stories.